So this is where we left off in the previous clip. I simply just copy and pasted these pleats that we created and positioned them in a circle manner around her waist. And now I'm just going to connect all of this with the segment sewing tool. So I'm going to grab my segment sewing tool and go one by one, just connecting the waistbands and also the pleats together. So nothing special here. Just connecting these that lie right next to each other, but don't also forget to connect the end part or the beginning, however you want it, with this one. And also check in the 3D window if everything is going all right. So far so good. And before we simulate, we just need to unfreeze the waistbands, because if we left them freeze, they're not really going to change their position. So select all of them with the transform pattern tool, right click and select unfreeze, which is not working for some reason. Okay, it worked for a single one. Let's try to select all of them now. Right click. No, it's still not. It's still giving me the option to freeze. Maybe if I just select, no, not really. Sometimes MD bugs a little bit, but it usually helps if you just select one by one and right click and unfreeze. So if this ever happens to you, just don't try to select all of the patterns, but try to unfreeze each pattern individually, and it usually works. Okay, so I think that's the final one, and let's simulate and keep your fingers crossed. There we go. And now it's looking a little bit funny because the outfit underneath it is frozen. So what I'm going to do is just select all the patterns we created before, right click, and now it's giving us an option to unfreeze. So that's very good. And simulate. There we go. Now I think the waistband can be holding around her waist tighter. So I'm going to select all of the parts from my waistband, and I'm just going to make them smaller by dragging this point inwards. And let's simulate to see what we have. I think we can afford to go even smaller. So you can freely manipulate the length of the waistband once you've already applied the pleats, because everything updates automatically. Okay, there we go. Now I'm also, as you've noticed, I didn't connect the seam lines, the pleats right here, because I also want our shorts to be visible. You can also freely close the pleated dress if you want to create a different kind of effect. So remember, in order to implement pleats in MD, the easiest way is to create only a part of the dress, starting off with just one piece of the waistband, and multiplying that length by 3. Those 3 parts will generate one single pleat, and it will be sewn onto the waistband with the help of the pleat sewing tool. Do not forget to add internal lines to your pleated part, because without them the pleating cannot be implemented. To avoid any issues when simulating, it is best to keep the pleats short and then slowly prolong them to the length we want our skirt to be. And as you can see, I have already done that. So if you want to do the same, you just grab your Edit Pattern tool and you select all of the lower points that consist of our skirt and simply prolong them. And simulate when you're done. There we go. So now the dress is a bit longer than it was. Sometimes the simulation may get a little messy, but you just need to leave it out a bit. So this is the final look that we achieved in the end. Now you can also play with this outfit. As I said, you can close the gap that I have right here, or you can leave it open for the shorts. I actually also deleted the pockets that were in this part of the shorts because I thought it was a little bit too much. And I also made the waistband even tinier so it's hugging her waist more than before. And before we move on to the next module, let's quickly go through on what we learned throughout the course of this one. So we have further strengthened our knowledge of sewing and creating patterns, and also learning how to manipulate the seam lines, moving them and making them longer if needed, and so on. We have devoted some attention to creating detail using settings like shrinkage weft, warp, manipulating particle distance, and using tacking. We also got to use the layer clone over feature with the pockets and waistband, and finally we had a thorough look at the pleats tool and pleats sewing. Now with all of this knowledge, we're able to move on to the next module where we will take on another creative way of sewing in MD, and that is by creating a handbag. I hope to see you there.